Hello! So for my self-education project this semester, I did a study of the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, and it is a book of prophecy that tells what is going to happen prior to Jesus' coming, when he comes, and what happens after the fact. So basically there are 22 chapters in the book of Revelation, and because self-ed was a 12-week thing, I did 1 to 2 chapters per week. And I did a full study of each chapter, and I used online commentaries to help me with my study and to help me outline each chapter. So the main website that I used was BibleHub.com, and it had different commentaries of reliable theologians, pastors, and people who study the Bible, and it put them side by side for me, and it had a breakdown of every verse or every chapter or section. So as I read and analyzed the book, I was able to look at theirs and see how it compared and how accurate my analyzation and description of those things were. So basically every week I started with this notebook, and I decided, like I said, to outline every single book and organize it by week in this notebook. So as you can see, this is an example of my week 1 study, and I would break it down by section with chunks of verses. So for example, this was prologue, verse 1 through 3, and then I had my analysis down below. Sometimes I would go verse by verse, and sometimes I would go by section. Whenever I saw important terms or definitions, I would define those and make those clear within my study, because a lot of Revelation is based on imagery and metaphors, and so it was really important to define those things and look at their true meanings, so that later on in the book, when they were used again, you could understand like what they were talking about. Something that was very important while studying this were numerical values. So a lot of times the numbers 7, 10, 4, etc. would pop up in the book. So, for example, a lot of the plagues that took place and a lot of the blessings from God would come in increments of 7, and a lot of times those would be parallel to the original temple in the Old Testament. So within the Bible, there's the Old Testament and the New Testament, and a lot of it was parallels back and forth. So because this was a book of prophecy, it was also answering prophecy from the Old Testament. So a lot of things you had to pay attention to see what verses in the Old Testament it would parallel to. So that was really cool to learn about. Look at verses from the Old Testament and see really what that was talking about. So the author of Revelation, his name is John, and he wrote Revelation while living in exile on the Greek island of Patmos while writing this, and he received this message from God through one of God's angels, who revealed all of this to him, and the book was broken down in what was, what is, and what is to come. So it showed us what was happening right now during the time of his writing this book. So it focused on main 7 churches in Asia and their sins, which kind of represented everyone in the world. Most importantly, how Christians can be lukewarm, and so it set us up for this story of but real life example of what is to come, and what's going to happen when Jesus prepares to come back to earth. And so it was really cool to just really break down everything in the book of Revelation, because I've read it 1,000 times, but I just have never really paid attention, and a lot of the things that I took for realistic truths were just representative of other things that I didn't even recognize. It helped me to really piece together the full picture of the Bible as a whole, and to understand each and every individual piece that worked together. A lot of what was also confusing was the chronological timing of the book, because a lot of times it would bring up something that was going to happen in the future, it was going to happen in the past, and you kind of had to decipher a timeline of what was going to happen. So it was really helpful that I put in this notebook kind of the order of things that were happening, and I was able to look through that. And this really helped me with my study skills, and I feel like I'm going to be able to use this method a lot in the future when it comes to studying different books of the Bible. And if I ever am looking at Revelation again, I can reference this in different things, because there's so much information in this. Obviously, it's not all just stuck in my head, but it's going to be really cool to look back through and to understand what John was really writing when he meant this, and to understand what was meant by all those different things. So I have loved doing this project. It's been so fulfilling just to learn these different study methods and to learn what other people have said about this book. And it's something that I've been really wanting to do for a long time. I'm so happy that I finally made it happen.